Coming up on the Mindful Midlife Crisis.
Brian has a Minnesota accent that's like...
I don't.
No. But it's like, it's kind of middle-ish, right? Like, it feels like it's like kind of suburban and not iron rangy. And Billy, yours is a little bit further. And like, it's a little bit Brainardy, it's out there. And, but then when you guys had Tom Cody on, because his accent is legit. Like,
yeah, for sure.
He does not mess around. He's like he talks as though he's someone who has never left the state of Minnesota, and like a trip to the city is kind of a big deal.
Welcome to the Mindful Midlife Crisis, a podcast for people navigating the complexities and possibilities of life's second half. Join your hosts, Billy and Brian, a couple of average dudes who will serve as your armchair life coaches as we share our life experiences, both the good and the bad, in an effort to help us all better understand how we can enjoy and make the most of the life we have left to live in a more meaningful way. Take a deep breath, embrace the present, and journey with us through the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Welcome to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. I'm your host, Billy, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Brian, on the bass. Brian, how you doing over there, man?
I am dynamite.
Oh, dynamite!
TNT, pow!
Good times!
That's right.
Excellent. Brian, we're both feeling kind of excited for a lot of reasons here because, first of all, this is our last episode of Season 1, and we just got a notification from Buzzsprout that we eclipsed 2,000 downloads. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Season 1. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely, we do.
And if you're thinking, oh, does that mean you guys are going to take a break? Hell no. We'll be right back.
We keep going.
We're going to keep going. We're going to kick off Season 2 as long as our guest doesn't back out. We haven't heard from her. We haven't heard from her yet. She hasn't committed to next week's episode. So we really hope that she does. And if not, if you are a mom of girls, we will gladly interview you. If you're on it's going to be short notice, but we'd gladly interview you. Season 2, we are going to talk about the female brain, just like we did with the male brain. So we'll do a 3-part series there where we talk about the mommy brain, the little girl brain, and the teenage girl brain. We're going to bring our good friend Sarah back on to talk about the female sex drive. I imagine she's got plenty to say there as well. And then we will also talk about the emotionally mature female brain. We're going to talk about love languages. We will have dating expert Sally Catherine on from Montreal, Canada, and she's going to talk about dating when we get to our age. And then we're also going to have Dr. Yvette Erasmus on talking about the importance of communication. Listen to all of our episodes, but listen to that episode like 4 or 5 times because she is a national treasure. She's so amazing.
Us eclipsing 2,000 downloads, I think we can officially categorize this podcast as a juggernaut.
Yes!
That's right.
Thank you, everybody, for making this podcast a juggernaut. So one thing that the listeners enjoy, Brian, is I've been getting messages from listeners who love when you drop some science knowledge. So tell us, what is new in science?
The Voyager spacecrafts are in interstellar space right now.
I saw the movie Interstellar and I thought it was boring and awful.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Oh, good. I'm actually glad that you
there was
feel that
no
way.
science in that whatsoever. Anytime Hollywood comes into the picture, just forget about science.
Okay, so how is, outside of it being real and not real, how is Voyager being an interstellar important to the study of science, and how is it different than what that movie made interstellar space travel out to be?
Well, that was a pretty broad question. I'll say to the second half of that question, just ignore everything they did in the movie.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, that's pretty much just get rid of it. Why it's important? Because for the first time, we have left the solar system. That's why something we have made has left the solar system. Not to mention, we're actually getting readings off of those spacecraft right now. A lot of those instruments, I mean, The majority of them are shut down. I'd say probably about 60% of them are shut down, but 40% of the instruments are still working, such as the cosmic ray subsystem, the low energy charged particles detector, the magnometer, plasma wave subsystems are still online. That's Voyager 1, by the way. And all that stuff is online for Voyager 2. But the reason it's important is because now we can get readings in interstellar space. Scientists can interpret that, and it tests some of our theories about what we think about the heliopause and stuff. Are you familiar with the heliopause?
I imagine you're going to teach me.
Okay, what the heliopause means is that's as far out as our sun affects.
Oh.
Okay, so the solar wind essentially stops at the heliopause, this run out of energy, and that's where actual interstellar space starts. So now, for the first time, scientists can take readings without our sun in the picture, or at least a lot less.
Okay, that is fascinating. I'll give you that. You know how much I hate science, but that is fascinating.
Do you want to guess how far right now Voyager 1 is from the sun?
If I stacked $1 bills 3 trillion times, could I reach it?
Nope. You'd still be short.
Okay.
Unless those dollar bills are 4 miles thick each.
Oh, that sounds way out there.
Yeah, it's not. So it's 14 trillion miles out there right now. Trillion with a T. 14,179,876,222 miles at the time I read this. But it's accelerating, so now it's at 264, 280, because it's traveling really fast.
So as a science nerd, as you are, when you say 14 trillion miles, that brings to mind that terrifying scene in the movie Gravity when she's just floating out into space. That terrifies me, just the thought of that. So the thought that Voyager's 14 trillion miles away?
14 trillion from the sun now.
From the sun.
It's actually getting closer to Earth right now. You want your mind blown? Because of the way our orbits are traveling, the Earth is traveling around the sun right now faster than Voyager is traveling out of the solar system. So we are actually getting closer to Voyager, and the sun is getting farther away. That's how you see when you start to understand what relativity is and how it works. Because notice I had to say it's traveling 38,026 miles an hour relative to the sun. But it's different relative to the Earth, and we're actually getting closer right now. But as soon as we make the bend on our orbit, we'll be going away from it faster than it's moving away from the sun.
All right. Well, you lost me in the last part there. So
Yeah.
to all the scientists out there, I hope you enjoyed that part. Thank you, Brian. You're so knowledgeable when it comes to science.
I just like this stuff. I like reading about it.
Here's the thing. I probably should fact check anything that you say, because you could tell me anything and I'd just be like, okay, that sounds good.
That's true. I could do that.
All right, so, and if scientists, if you're out there and you're listening and you want to call bullshit, please feel free to contact us. Email us at mindfulmidlifecrisis@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. Brian, you also took your first family schoolie trip last week, so tell us about that.
Well, we drove from Minneapolis to Kansas City, just south of Kansas City, actually, where we got some barbecue in Kansas City.
How was the barbecue?
It was great. It was Joe's. I had the ribs and the brisket. It was amazing. You know, one thing about Kansas City barbecue, though, they like their barbecue sauce sweeter than I like it. I like a nice bold barbecue sauce. I don't like the honey kind of barbecue.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the barbecues in Kansas City are honey barbecues, so I got to go for their spicy. So Joe's regular stuff is more like Sweet Baby Ray's.
Okay.
It's very, very balanced, lots of sweet, but not as many bold notes. But their hot stuff is actually really good. So we went to Kansas City, and then we stayed in an alpaca farm, which is absolutely brilliant, by the way.
An alpaca farm. All right. So what is that all about? Because I saw the pictures, and I'm so curious.
It was Timberview Farm alpacas. So what it basically is they raise alpacas for products. So they shear them, once a year. Every year in May. He actually, the gentleman's name was Brad, who owned it. Brad and Becky owned it. They're just wonderfully nice people. We actually got in kind of late, and they were still nice enough to let us in through the gate and make us totally comfortable when we got there. We do a thing called Harvest Hosts, which is you get in this club, and a bunch of business owners register their businesses with this club, and you pay for the information. That's what your membership covers, and then they allow you to stay there. And the etiquette behind it is you purchase something from them or plug them, that sort of deal. So I leave them a good review. And they were just wonderful down at Timberview Farm. I mean, they just really nice. And then we were the only people there. The boys got up in the morning with Brad and went and fed the turkeys and the ducks and the pigs and the alpacas. And so they shear alpacas every year. And then they sell the alpaca wool for products. And I got to tell you, Billy, I'm a very particular about socks. Okay.
Okay.
I usually got to have the merino wool socks just because I need the breathability plus the warmth, right? I tried alpaca. I got 2 sets of alpaca socks, and I'm a convert, man. I'm going for it from now on. Only alpaca on these feet.
Wow.
It's that good. Like, it's warmer than wool, but also cooler at the same time. Like, your feet stay warmer, but more air goes through the sock. It's pretty cool. So anyway, so we went to the alpaca farm, and they were wonderful.
So here's a quick question. So what were like your accommodations?
We stayed in the bus.
Oh, so you could just camp.
Pulled in.
So did they just let you camp there or what?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what Harvest Hosts is.
Okay.
So you drive onto their property, and we're self-sufficient, so we don't need to use their bathrooms or electricity or anything. We just parked on their property, slept overnight, and the boys woke up in the morning and fed all the animals, and they had a great time with all that. And then we drove from Kansas City up to Omaha. Omaha, we stayed in a state park for a while. We went to this museum, lots of old planes and cool military stuff at that museum. And, did the whole camping thing, started a fire, did all that stuff. Then we went to the Henry Doorly Zoo in Omaha.
Is that the big zoo that's in Omaha?
Big zoo. Oh, man, it was big. It was off season, so I'd say about 40% of the stuff that was there was closed or off season, shut down in some capacity. But wow, they have a lot of construction going on there right now. This summer, that zoo is going to be ridiculous. So much stuff.
It's right across the street from Rosenblatt Stadium, which is where they used to hold the College World Series, and now the College World Series, I think it's at like New Rosenblatt. I don't know if it's a different title, but the College World Series is a blast in Omaha.
That's cool. Have you gone?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
It's so at the College World Series, they have, the teams are there, and a lot of times it's a Texas team like Rice University or Texas University, something like that. And in the parking lot, everybody is tailgating in like their $1 million motorhomes.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll just walk by and people will be like, "Hey, come on over here. Who are you cheering for today?" Well, I don't know. I said, "Well, for $10, you can have all you can eat and all you can drink here, and you just need to cheer for Texas."
Wow.
Here's my $10.
Done.
And thank you. And have had a brat or two. You're not pigging out, but you have a brat or two, you have a beer or two, you socialize with the people there, and
go to
you
the
go
next
to the game.
one.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was. It's very, very cool. So I liked Omaha while I was there.
The layout's great. I know. I saw the stadium because you're right. It's right across from the zoo, from the front of the zoo too, right there. It was great. It's a very clean area, nice. I mean, very cool.
So what else did you guys do?
And then that night after we did the zoo, we camped out at a candy factory.
What?
Yeah.
So what kind of candy did you guys eat? I imagine the boys were just...
What kind didn't we? Because in addition to making candy there, they also have, 3,300 varieties of pre-manufactured candy as well. Yeah, we just got a little candy, and once again, it was a Harvest Host. So we threw a electrical line out, and they had electrical for us, and we had a bunch of candy, and they toured the place, and then we just camped out overnight there. It was a really neat little city. It was called Glenwood, Iowa, and very picturesque. Like, there's a little town square. Apparently, the place we ate, which was a pizza joint, is in the top 100 pizza joints in the country. and it was fantastic. It's very. Have you ever had punch pizza?
Oh, I love punch pizza. I had punch pizza last night.
It's kind of like that.
That's interesting
really
because you're a thicker crust kind of guy.
I am, and
Neapolitans are thin.
Still good.
Got it.
Really good. I enjoyed that pizza.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like an amazing trip.
It was great. Nothing bad happened. Everything worked. It was cool, man.
So as I mentioned, this is the last episode of season 1. So we're actually going to do a recap. And like I mentioned last week, we are finishing out with 2 bonus episodes. We had listeners Lee and Scott on last week, and they shared their story. Shout out to you guys once again for sharing your story, for being vulnerable. We really, really appreciate it. So our guest this week is the always entertaining Matt Hazard. Matt Hazard is the lead trumpet player for the band Space Needle. He frequently plays the harmonica when I do my ukulele recitals. Like, what else does he... Oh, that's right. He is also the lead singer, the frontman of the world's most dangerous cover band, the Brute Squad, lead singer in bands for 26 years, solid gold dancer, father to 2 beautiful children, top 10 luckiest husband in the world, adopted Arkansaniac, I guess, and a devoted listener to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. In fact, he sends us notes every single week talking about what he liked about the episode. So we thought, what better way to conclude season 1 than to have the always entertaining Matt Hazard on to talk about what he has learned during season 1. Ladies and gentlemen, the lead singer of the Brute Squad, Mr. Matt Hazard. Thank you for being here. How are you doing today, sir?
I love you. Always have.
Oh, we love you as well. So happy to see you.
It is such a joy to be here. Listen, the first thing I want to say, I'm going to totally derail this entire episode and destroy everything you've built.
That's okay. We'll just edit this out.
Okay, good. No, I'm so proud of you guys. This is a great idea. It's a great venture for the both of you. I think that's the first thing I want to really say is that I've really enjoyed listening to it. I appreciate what you guys are doing and what you're trying to do for people. And I just from the very first episode, I was like, I'm going to listen to this. And it's been appointment listening every Wednesday morning for me. So.
Well, we really appreciate that. In fact, I actually might make that my ringtone. So thank you. Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit more about you, Matt. We always ask, we ask our guests to tell us what 10 roles they play in their lives. So what are the 10 roles that you play in your life?
So I said father, husband, son, singer, musician, suburban hipster, passionate home chef, novice guitar enthusiast, computer nerd, POA or HOA board member, and aspiring world traveler.
Wonderful. So Brian and I know you a little bit, but you are, in fact, a passionate home chef, and you do quite well. You and our good friend, Pete Bervin.
Pete's better than I am.
Yeah, but you're both pretty top notch. And I'm also going to say you talked about that you were a top 10 luckiest husband. I'm also going to say you're probably a top 10 luckiest son, because for sure your mom and your dad are 2 of the coolest parents of all time. They go to all the Brute Squad shows, and they're up and dancing still at their age. They're fun.
Dan and Shirley are great.
Well, they're not. My mom's got 2 replaced knees now, and my dad is. They're in their. My dad's in his 80s. My mom's in her. So they're not quite as spry as they once were. But yeah, they used to get out quite a bit.
Your dad and I have had some heated conversations about the Beatles because he is not a Beatles fan.
Accurate.
And I'm not a big Beatles fan.
I'm a giant Beatles fan.
And we
fight about it constantly.
I appreciate the Beatles. I understand their place in rock and roll history. So I love that your dad takes such a hard line stance against the Beatles. And
He's
they're
Elvis all the way, and I'm like, Elvis sucks.
That was going to be my question. If it's not the Beatles, who is it? Is it the Stones? Is it the so Elvis for him is it? He's an Elvis man, which is really surprising because the Beatles were influenced by Elvis quite a lot.
Right, they were big fans of each other. And
right,
I don't know, strange.
Interesting. And I love both your mom and your dad. I love your whole family. I love your face, and I miss it. I wish it says that you're a newly transported Arkansian or whatever.
Yes.
So you moved to Arkansas recently.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years.
2 years ago. Can you talk a little about what prompted that move?
Yeah, so I work for a company that does computer support for dental offices. So really, I work a lot from home, and I could work from pretty much anywhere. And I was given the opportunity by my boss to expand our business down here, but that was prompted actually by an opportunity that my wife had for work. Northwest Arkansas is home to Walmart, and my wife works for a beer and spirits manufacturer that works obviously closely with Walmart. Not like Minnesota, almost everywhere else, Walmart sells booze and beer. And so her company works closely with Walmart, and she was given the opportunity to work on the Walmart team for her company. And it was a significant opportunity for us. And I was like, yeah, I like warm weather. Let's do this.
And we've talked about this before. Your wife is the breadwinner.
Yeah, primarily. Yep. Yeah, she when my check comes in, she looks at it and she's, oh,
that's really good job, honey.
You're like the fun money, and
yeah.
I don't know, but I feel like some men are maybe intimidated if they're not the breadwinner, and you're very fine with that.
Yeah, I don't care. I do have a thing like I want my money to be able to cover like the house note, and like that it's just something in the probably somewhere in that male mind that you explored in some of those episodes where
you want to be the provider.
I need to be doing enough. And so as long as I'm there, I'm super happy that she makes a lot more than I do.
Matt Hazard, if it's any consolation, I aspire to your situation.
Yeah.
That would be fine with me.
No, it's totally great.
So then that kind of leads into one of the three roles that you are most looking forward to in the second half of your life is the first one you said was father and husband, and you're counting them as one. So can you talk a little bit about why are you looking forward to those roles? I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory, but what's your take on it?
To some degree, yeah. I think in the second half of my life, like I spent so much of my early life not being a father and a husband, obviously. For the first 35 years of my life, I wasn't a father. And for the first 33 years, I wasn't a husband. So I kind of got a late start on some of that. And I really feel like that time is valuable. Those formative years were valuable. And I think that giving that to my kids and trying to shape that for my kids, and then especially looking forward to, retirement and spending time with my wife. Once we're empty nesters, like we have all these aspirations and plans, and I'm sure you guys, Brian, you're probably the same.
Oh yeah.
I think that, we want to see the world. We want to go do fun things. We want to take our kids with us on a lot of these trips too. But, and while we're still working, we don't want to be just sedentary and like, let's get to retirement. And then you never know what happens, between now and then. But I just think it was such a valuable time for me, those formative years. And I want to be able to pay that forward to my children and do it right and be a good dad for them. Like there's no bigger job.
So you talked about wanting to be an aspiring traveler, which is also in your top three here. What family adventures do you want to take? And what are some adventures that you want to take, maybe just you and your wife? Are there any solo adventures that you'd like to take?
That's an interesting question. I hadn't even thought about doing solo adventures. There are times when I do travel by myself back to Minnesota to play with the Brute Squad and things of that nature. But I always do that in the context of like, I'm going to go for the weekend and be right back home. In terms of travel with my kids, we want to do the fun kid stuff. We're going to do Disney. We're going to do all that stuff and inside of the United States. But I want my kids to see foreign culture as well. Like I want to go to Europe with my kids when I think that it's safer and they're old enough. We have 2. We're done with 2. Like that's like Brian, not happening. Like that third situation. I know that story well.
Yeah.
No.
You better go get snipped, dude. It doesn't take much.
You know, I have a great story about that too, if we get to it later.
Well, we can get to it right now. Let's go ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much of this story I want to share. Brian, you know.
Yeah.
I told you this. So I went for a consultation and to get snipped. And the doctor did he cupped it up and, he's investigating and he's like, oh man, you have like really thick skin. And I was like, okay. Is that bad? And he's like, well, I think we're going to have to put you under to do this. And I was like, oh, and keep in mind, I have never been under anesthesia in my entire life. Not once.
Oh, wow. Lucky.
I've had oral surgery. I had a tooth and I was like, Novocaine's fine. He's like, are you sure? I was like, no, yeah, I'm good. I want to know what you're doing. And so I have a thing about that. And so I was a little bit scared, but I was like, I'll still do it, and scheduled it. And I came home and told my wife about it and Melissa, and she was like, no, you're not doing that. And she had we were like, Otis was like 3 months old, my son. And we just she was in the doldrums of that, postpartum mentality. And she was like, nope. You're not going under, and because you have a thing about it. So I'm scared that you're going to die, and I'm going to be here with a 3-month-old and a 2-year-old by myself. You're not doing it. And I was like, okay.
That is enough.
Twist my arm.
That's enough to scare anybody who has had children.
Yeah.
Being alone with a 3-month-old and
the really short version of that story is my ball bag was too thick to.
Wow, I'm impressed. Actually, I'm quite impressed. That's I've never heard of that before.
Oh man,
that was a candid breakthrough for all of us. No, it's not. It was possible, obviously. It's not like it's, an elephant skin or anything.
Like he's got to get out the chainsaw or one of those industrial concrete cutting things.
It's just he thought it would be real painful, so he wanted to put me under.
Ew. Oh, man. See, mine was painful, and recovery was and everything anyway.
Yeah.
But, and I have regular ball skin, so I can't imagine.
Oh my God. This is not I'm sweating because now as I'm thinking about, because I've been thinking about getting one, and actually a friend.
Now, are you wondering, are you going to go home and feel how thick is it?
So a friend of mine, she told me that she is requesting that her husband get one for his 40th birthday. And I told her, hey, if he wants to go in together, maybe we can get a 2-for-1 special or something like that.
Outstanding.
So so that's on the table. Is I may talk to him and say,
what's that conversation with the doctor like? Hey doc, what do you give us if we both go?
And do you both lay on the same table and he just does one and then the other?
Why don't you do him and then just do me right after?
Doc, you don't have to clean the instruments or nothing. We know each other. Just go ahead and do it.
Oh, that is amazing. What just thick skin to thin. Okay. All right. Things that,
this is all going to be cut out. Don't worry about it.
Oh no, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's prize. That's a gold story right there. Okay, we'll shift gears here. So, guitar enthusiast. Now, I don't know. I know you have guitars. I know you fiddle around with guitars.
There's one right there. Right there.
Yeah. There it is, hanging over there. So how many guitars do you have?
I have 3 now. I don't have a lot.
And who plays them for you?
I play them.
Oh, okay. All right.
I have begun to like, since we've all had this shift in our realities during the pandemic, and I started taking online lessons from someone that was recommended from the guitar players in the Brute Squad. Actually, both of them were like, that guy's good. He's got a great online presence, tons of videos, tons of lessons. His name escapes me. Otherwise I would promote the page is theartofguitar.com. Anyway, it's he's got a ton of YouTube videos, but it's all available on his page if you pay, and it's not that expensive for a year. So I started doing that, and I can play 10 chords and 2 strum patterns, and that's about enough to play 500 songs or so.
Yeah, I was going to say that's 80% of songs right there. Rock and roll songs anyway, man. So you're good.
Exactly. My hand ever got to the point where it wasn't super tired from playing like 3 bar chords, I'd be all set.
How many guitars do you have, Brian? How many bass / 6 strings do you have?
I have 4 basses, and up until yesterday, I had 4 guitars. Now I have 3 guitars and 4 basses because I traded 2 in and got 1 other. Like, I got a really, really nice guitar yesterday. Like,
what'd you get?
Like I got an LTD EC1000. Which is basically a Gibson Les Paul ripoff, but it's made by LTD. It's a fantastic guitar. Oh my gosh, I was playing for like 3 hours last night, just banging around on punk tunes.
Yeah, I've been playing like 15, 20 minutes a day, and I just try and play every day.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, because you got to build your fingers up. It's a real bummer when you don't have the finger strength, but once you get over that, you make some really good progress.
Now, I'll tell you that the reason why I know Matt Hazard is because I know Brian, and Brian is in Space Needle, and he's in Brute Squad, and it's kind of like the music scene in the Twin Cities is very incestual in that you're not just in one band, you're in a lot of bands. And this is a great music scene, and I cannot wait for live music to return back the way that we've always known it to be. And that means more Brute Squad shows, I hope, whenever you're able to come back to Minnesota, Matt. That would be lovely because I miss your face.
I miss yours too.
Just to give you guys an idea, the M80's got a show offer the other day. The way it was described to me, he's like, "Hey, Brian, do you want to play a barn party on such and such date?" And I said, "I am so desperate to play at this particular time. I don't give a shit if there's cows in the barn. I will play that motherfucker." So,
exactly.
I want to get out there again.
I've seen all of the guidance around it and everything like that. People are booking live music shows now again. The bars, I know in Minnesota, in Arkansas, it's a little bit different right now because it's like they've taken down the mask mandate, and like people are just going out and doing it. And also is hilarious because we're one of the least vaccinated states in the nation. So great job, everybody. But in Minnesota, I know it's a little bit different, but their bars are saying like, hey, we can have bands back, but while you're not at your table, you got to be wearing a mask. Wear the mask. Go. Just go. Mm-hmm. Just go see bands, because these artists, so many of them, it's either the path to their sanity or it's the path to their livelihood, and they are struggling. And
yeah, a lot of
this
people.
Is the biggest thing for them. Like when the doors start to open, you need to be there. You need to be there.
Get out and support the arts, people. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, Matt Hazard is going to share with us the top 10 things he has learned from listening to our podcast so far through season 1. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. If you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please do us a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, giving our show a quick 5-star review with a few kind words helps us on our quest to reach the top of the podcast charts. Finally, since you can't make a mixtape for your friends and loved ones like you used to do, share this podcast with them instead. We hope our experiences resonate with others and inspire people to live their best lives. Thanks again. And now, let's take a minute to be present with our breath. If you're listening somewhere safe and quiet, close your eyes and slowly inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do that one more time. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and open your eyes. You feel better? We certainly hope so. And now, back to the show. Welcome back to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Brian and I are here with our good friend, the always entertaining, the devilishly handsome, the Rubenesque, Matt Hazard. He is a good friend of ours, moved away to Arkansas. We miss his face. He's a devoted listener to our podcast. So we asked him, hey, man, you want to come on and share some things that you've learned from listening to our podcast so far through season 1? And he's like, hell yeah, I do. So
you're damn right.
Matt, get us going here. What are some things that you have learned, or what are some things that has resonated with you throughout this first season?
Okay, real quick word derivation nerd out for me. The word Rubenesque, the reason I shared it, are you familiar with the where that word came from?
I'm not. You shared it with me and I was like, what's that mean?
So Rubenesque is, so Rubens was this painter. He's like a 16th, 17th century painter. And he painted ladies kind of heavy because he liked them a little voluptuous. And it became like a way of describing someone's body. It was like, oh, it's kind of Rubenesque. Like, so it is heavy, but in an attractive way is what is the connotation that I've always taken from it. So,
and I've seen you dance, and
you're welcome.
It is an attractive and sex machine presentation.
Oh yeah, it delivers every time.
You are quite welcome, both of you.
So tell us what you've learned so far.
Like I said, kind of from the jump, first thing, I'm so proud of you guys. What a great idea for a show. So many of us in our group of friends are kind of entering that age where we're 40 to 50 years old. And I just recently, being the youngest member of the Brute Squad, you're welcome. I just turned 40 though last year. So that was kind of the first thing, was like, God, what a great idea for talking to a group of people that, like, yeah, they own a lot. There's a part of privilege, like, oh, well, who's going to help the middle-aged white man? Like, it doesn't have to be, obviously every middle-aged man, but even so, it's like, that's about the most privileged group that you can really run into. But like, it is also a group that carries a lot of burden. And it's a group that, as you said, you explored in the episode on suicide, kills himself at a disproportionate rate. And like, that's scary stuff. That's scary stuff for all of us that are entering that age. Like, why? What are you thinking about in those times? So that was the first big takeaway. But if I was to go episode by episode, the first couple of episodes I kind of felt like a lot of emotional attachment to, because it was a lot about you guys, and I know a lot of your stories. I didn't know some of your story, Billy, but I knew Brian's story intimately.
Yeah, you were there for it. I mean, you were there through the whole thing.
Yeah, so I was there through all of it.
You were one of the people I called, in fact, when I just before I went into the hospital.
I was actually going to ask you to share that story, and I don't know how much there is to it, but can you talk a little bit about that?
It's not a super long story. So when Brian got sober, and we all knew, like, I remember the first Brute Squad practice at Brian's house in his basement. He had a kegerator, and I want to say we were 20. I was 23 or 4 years old.
Yep.
And we got there and they were like, hey, how about a beer? And I was like, yeah, I like a beer, And we played for 5 hours or so that evening. And I had 16 beers going beer for beer with those guys.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready. As Kevin Hart would say, he wasn't ready. Like, I was not ready for that. Pete and Zeb, it was like our first practice, so Sped wasn't in the band yet, but Pete and Zeb were like, yeah, let's everybody, so we're just gonna go, like, I'm going home. And I was like, you guys are fucking driving? Like, like I'm hammered. And of course, you're 23 and 20. Don't judge me now. I was an idiot when I was a kid, but I did drive home that night.
Well, I think a lot of us have been there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was thumbs on the lines, like, like, and so that first summer playing with the Brute Squad, my tolerance went from like not super great to like I could drink with anybody, anywhere, just about. And it was in no small part because Brian was just an absolute, like, Brian would. Every time I would see him, I'm like, is that a new drink? Like he like.
Oh yeah. And what you didn't see is before you got there, I probably had 4 or 5 highballs before we started drinking. Really.
Right. So like, I knew that it was a personality. Like there are certain personalities that you. My brother is the same way. One of my brothers, that you attach to something, and it doesn't have to be alcohol. It can be gambling. It can be, nicotine, but when you attach to it, you go so hard at it, and like it becomes all encompassing. And I could see that a little bit in Brian. But anyway, the short version of the story was the night that Brian knew, like, he had his epiphany that he needed to go somewhere. He called me at work because he thought that I would be the only person that would pick up the phone.
Yeah, it was late. It was in the middle of the night.
It was like 4 a.m., 3:30, 4 a.m.
Yeah, because I had been up all night.
I worked overnights at that time back then, and Brian somehow had the cognizance of mind to call and be like, "Hey, man, I just had like a 5th of vodka and I took some Vicodins or whatever it was." And he's like, "I need you to take me to Hazleton." And I was like, it's like middle of my shift. Also, you should call the hospital. Like that's not an amount of things that you just go to detox. Like you need to go to a hospital right now. And he's like, "No, man, so it was I think that he didn't get the answer that he wanted from me, and then he hung up, and then you called your dad. I think it was right after that, right?
Yeah.
But that was the kind of link to that story. It was like he wanted me to leave work in the middle of and I was working in Egan, and he lived in Plymouth at the time, which for our listeners not out in Minnesota, that's about a 45-minute drive.
That's accurate.
And like then down to Chaska, and then back to Egan. I was like, "So you want me to leave work for 3 hours in the middle of my shift? I think I might get in trouble, Brian."
Yeah, to say I wasn't thinking clearly at that time is an understatement. As I recall, I had been awake for about 2 days at that point too.
Wow. Yeah. So that was a scary time. I remember, there's a famous story in the band of Brian showing up to a gig in a taxi drunk.
Yeah, that happened more than once. Yeah.
He showed, and it was a wedding gig. It was like noon, and we were setting up before the reception.
Oh yeah.
And he showed up drunk, and we had to be there for 10 hours. And he was like, can somebody give me some club soda? I'll be fine.
Jeez. Whew.
Again, though, when I would go on those benders, dude, I mean, I would be drunk from like Friday at 5. I would be drunk until Sunday, until I woke up in the morning on Monday. I mean, it was, you just hit it hard. So anyway, I was close to that story, but the third, or is it the fourth episode, the 2-part episode at Work Gym.
Oh, yeah, episode 6.
Oh, yeah, great.
With Delico and Maurice.
Yes. That episode, the way I put it is I was so happy. I listened to you guys a lot of times on a stationary bike just to be exercising and doing something active while I'm listening to the podcast. And it was a really good thing that I was on the bike, because when you listen to somebody who is so devoted to and like inspired by their work and what they do, and especially when it's about being active and being that, it's hard not to be like, yeah, let's get it. Like, if
you don't follow Maurice on Facebook, you should friend him, because he also just makes wonderful posts. And I mean, especially in the context of what's going on in the world right now. I mean, the guy is smart. He's succinct. I mean, it's great. I get a lot of benefit out of just listening and reading his posts, you know?
My favorite line of that show, because it made me laugh, because he was talking about it in the context of like what you need to do to stay fit. And I'm an avid runner. I do the stationary bike. I'm dealing with an injury right now, but I'm an avid runner. I ran 500 miles last year. And Maurice was like, you can stay fit, stay thin. You don't have to do that much. Just a little bit of exercise and cardio, as long as you don't eat like an asshole.
I got the same thing out of that episode.
You know what's great is after that episode, I went to Five Guys and I got a double cheeseburger and fries, and I took a picture of it. I'm like, don't eat like an asshole, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh no, I did all the other stuff. That's me every day though. I eat like an asshole every day. Every day.
Oh, but it's so delicious.
It's so good. I love food.
Yeah.
I have a bad relationship with food. I have a codependent relationship with food. But
when you're as good a cook as you are,
it's hard not
to. That's why I'm a good cook, Billy. Like, I want to eat delicious food, so you got to learn how to make it. Otherwise, you're going to go broke.
You can't trust a skinny chef, right?
Right. Exactly.
What else resonated with you in season 1, Matt?
The episode with Tom Cody, I thought was really great. Really great.
He's a great dude.
I enjoyed the cut of that man's jib. He's quite right. Billy, you're an idiot. The Indigo Girls kick ass.
I'm not saying I don't like Indigo Girls. I'm not well versed. Okay, I got you.
You're an idiot for not knowing.
They have a song on Kosovo tribute, like it was a fundraiser for Kosovo or something like that, and it's a badass song. I think it's called Go. It's a real badass song. I like it a lot, but I just was never much of an Indigo Girls fan, and now that Tom Cody's a fan and Brian's a fan, and you've called me an idiot for not listening to him, I feel like I need to get into it.
Brian's he's not officially a fan. He's heard of them and he likes them, but he's like, he doesn't deep dive.
I don't deep dive, no, but I have listened without prompting. I've been like, okay, let me check out their catalog. I've spun it. Have I spun it a bunch of times? No. But I want to put something together here. That Kosovo thing, I'm guessing you knew about that because Pearl Jam was on it.
That's what the unfortunately god-awful Last Kiss is on.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Correct.
Oh, God, that's a horrible version of that song.
Yeah.
It's not a great song.
It's my least favorite Pearl Jam song. Like, it's not my least favorite. There are definitely songs I like less, but it's in the bottom tier of songs I don't ever need to hear or see live again. Last Kiss is on that list. All right, what else have you learned, my friend?
So, and I should say, I immediately ordered one of Tom Cody's books after his talk.
Which one did you order?
Great question. It hasn't come yet.
Rebalanced Thinking, Rebalanced Living?
Yes, that's exactly the one.
Okay.
Yes.
I have that one on my bookshelf too, waiting to be read. It's not an audiobook format, so it could be a summer read. Tell us what else you've learned.
Your guest getting, in general, save this one, has been really, really good. Like, Sarah Rudell Beach is a person I feel like is really insightful, really smart, impossible not to like. Like, she was just so enjoyable to listen to.
I was listening to that episode again yesterday because someone had brought it up and they were interested in that episode, and so I'm like, I'm going to re-listen to that one. And I texted Sarah and I'm like, just so you know, we're a lot better at this podcast thing than we were when we interviewed you. We're better at editing. We're better at asking questions. Like, we're just better at it. She was like, oh, yeah, you guys are fine. Thank you. That's very polite of you.
The outtake at the end was the best. It was I can't even work a fucking computer. That was my favorite moment.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's absolutely fantastic. Well, here, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, Matt's going to tell us what else he has learned from Season 1 of the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Thank you all for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. Thanks for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. We will do our best to put out new content every Wednesday to help get you over the midweek hump. If you'd like to contact us, or if you have suggestions about what you'd like us to discuss, feel free to email us at mindfulmidlifecrisis@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. Check out the show notes for links to the articles and resources we reference throughout the show. Oh, and don't forget to show yourself some love every now and then, too. And now, back to the show. Welcome back to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. We're here with our good friend, Matt Hazard, devoted listener, handsome, good friend of ours, fantastic lead singer of the band The Brute Squad. He is sharing the 10 things that he has learned through season 1, and now he wants to make fun of us.
100% accurate. Listen, so I feel like Brian has a Minnesota accent that's like I don't. No. But it's like it's kind of middle-ish, right? Like it feels like it's like kind of suburban and not iron rangy. And Billy, yours is a little bit further. And like it's a little bit Brainardy, it's out there. And but then when you guys had Tom Cody on, that because his accent is legit. Like,
yeah, for sure.
He does not mess around. He's like he talks as though he is someone who has never left the state of Minnesota, and like a trip to the city is kind of a big deal. But I know he's not. He's a learned man. I really like that episode, but I could feel the gravitational pull of his accent pulling you toward it. And Brian, you were telling a story. There was a moment where you were like telling a story and you were like, so it's like, Jesus, Brian.
You do that though. I would say in general, people do that. If you're talking to somebody with a Southern accent, you gravitate that way. My wife
gets so like, she looks at me sideways when I start to talk to people Southern, like here in Arkansas. It's really like, it doesn't bother her as much when it's Southerners, but it does bother her when there's someone of a different ethnic background, because she's like, you are a parrot and you can't like start trying to talk to Black people like you are a Black person.
Oh, I totally have heard you do that. Absolutely.
I know that. But it's just when we were in England, I was doing the same thing, and she's like, you don't sound British. Stop doing that.
I think it's natural. It is. It's natural to do that.
I found myself doing that in Puerto Rico one time, and the girl was like, where are you from? And I'm like,
¿Por qué? Mi amo Billy.
Clearly I'm from nowhere, because a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine, he has lived in Missouri, I think now for the last 20 years. And I ran into him at Thanksgiving, and he had the Southern accent. And I said, oh, you got a little bit of a Southern twang there. And he said, it's funny that you mention that because everybody down there thinks that I talk like a Northerner. And he said, I just don't belong anywhere I go.
It's interesting. This particular area in Bentonville where I live is so many transplants because there's 3 huge businesses here. There's Walmart and Tyson and JB Hunt are all based in Bentonville. Mm-hmm. And so they draw a ton of transplant workers. So I have there's more people from Minnesota on my block, Wisconsin, Arizona, the East Coast. There's somebody from Washington on the next block that I've gotten to know. They just moved actually, but there was a guy from Ireland on the next block over. And so it's just, it does not feel like a real Southern town, because very few people in this town actually that I regularly interact with have that kind of thick accent. You do run into it, but not as much.
So you shared 6 things with us in the last segment. We're going to give you 2 bonus because we're doing 2 bonus episodes. We did a bonus episode with Lee and Scott last week, and you're our bonus season 1 episode. We're going to give you a total of 12 because we love you. So,
thanks.
Yeah, what else have you learned from listening to Brian and I babble on week after week?
Generally speaking, you two, I'm not very fond of. I don't like
the show would be better if we weren't on it. We know that.
I miss Sarah Batcher so much. She is like, when I was still living in Minnesota, we got to hang out every once in a while. And what a cool person she is. And I could listen to her talk about sex like just about all day.
So I can't wait. She's going to come back on for the female sex drive, and you know she's going to bring it for that episode too.
Genius.
We laughed so hard during that episode. It was so much fun. Like even the stuff that we cut out was just so much fun. And when she comes back, I am going to open the bottle of testosterone cologne or whatever that Brian bought.
We've got it now.
It's been delivered, but we're saving it for that episode. So
can't wait for the payoff of that.
Yeah, and neither can I. I can't wait. Yeah, let's see how it magically that works. So we'll see.
The other thing about you guys are very self-deprecating on the show, but I want to tell your listeners who have not maybe seen pictures of you, some of them who have not, you're both very handsome men.
Well, thank you very much.
A lie. You're handsome.
We're also strong and we smell good.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's not go back.
We'll take.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just take with the mildly good looking. So we appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. You also are attractive enough to get away.
Oh, okay.
So, I didn't have children with her, so good work.
And an attractive wife too, though. I mean,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll say thank you for her.
Yeah. So what else have you learned, sir?
The 3-part series on the male brain I listened to pretty intently, and I found myself disagreeing with takes from the book that you guys kind of put out, and some I agreed with wholeheartedly. There was a section where you talked about kind of the way the male brain operates as an adult. Like as a listener, men want to fix things. So you hear a problem, you want to. I was like, that totally registers with me. It's absolutely accurate. I have a big problem. Like I recently, around especially the events in Minneapolis, there have been a lot of talk about how racism isn't born; it's taught. And I think that a lot of the way that we apply gender roles to children is also taught. That is to say, daddy's little princess, little boys are, rough and tumble, all that stuff. Like those are things. Some of it is true. Some of it is part of the biological aspect of being a male versus a female. But I think a lot of it is pushed on. Like if you're a little boy, you got to be tough. You can't cry when you fall. What are you, a pussy? Like that's not. I think that's a taught behavior to some degree, because I know girls that are rough and tumble. I know girls that are stronger than their male counterpoints as children. And my son loves playing dress up with my daughter. They love wearing Frozen dresses, and I encourage it because I think it's great for them to play collaboratively, and I think it's fun. And so I think that there's some of the takes in that book, or at least I didn't read the book, so I apologize for my ignorance there, but some of the takes that were presented, I was like, that's just not a thing. Like in the alpha males thing, I think I told you about after the episode. I think that alpha male is, some of it is disputed science. Some of it I think so much of it is dependent on a social hierarchy. So when you're an alpha male in one situation, like if I'm in a room full of singers, I'm like, I'm gonna smoke these turkeys. Like that's my mentality in that moment. But if we're gonna go play basketball, I'm tall, but like I'm not gonna be good. Like I'm gonna shrink in that situation. And it's not indicative of anything genetic or anything, in the operations of my brain. There are social hierarchies in humans that I think you can't just categorically say this is an alpha male, this is a beta male.
So here's my challenge to that, though. Even if you were playing basketball, when the game's all done, would people gravitate towards you? To me, that's what I think an alpha male is do people gravitate towards you, and can you command a space and get what you want? I feel like I can command a space. I feel like I've got good stage presence. I don't necessarily know, though, in a room full of strangers that I have the confidence to get what I want. Like, if I had to make a sale I could not make a sale.
I hate it too.
I can't. I'm just not. And my dad is a natural salesman.
See, I could do that all day.
Brian is a natural
day long.
salesman. Yeah, and I to me, that's so uncomfortable. So to me, in my mindset, that's what I think of as an alpha male, as someone who can just go and get it. Consequences be damned. That sort of thing.
But I still think that plays in a term of social hierarchy. So when you're talking about like in a sales situation, yes, you're walking into a room full of strangers, but how much command do you have? Like, I'm a personable person. I like talking to people. People generally like talking to me. People do gravitate toward me. But if I was trying to sell, like one of the things that I have to do down here is try and sell dentists on my computer services. And I'm comfortable with fixing your computer. I'm not comfortable with telling you why I'm the best choice to fix your computer. The antithesis of that is when I'm in a situation where if I'm auditioning for a band, again, it's in the same vein. I'm still trying to convince strangers to buy me. And I can definitely do that because what I know, like I have great confidence in myself situationally. And I think that everything boils down to that in some way or another. Like if you tried to get Tom Brady to sell D&D books, like he had no shit about D&D. He's going to be confident, but everybody in that room is going to be like, listen to this idiot. He doesn't know anything.
But is there something to being able to fake it till you make it? Is that a characteristic of alpha male? See, I'm very curious. We're gonna talk to Teresa Sandy, and she wrote a book called Fierce Not Fears. And you can pre-order it if you want to do that before we talk to her. It's at www.teresa, Teresa Sandy, SANDE.com. Teresa Sandy, Fierce Not Fears. And it's a book about imposter syndrome. And I feel like what you're talking about, even just saying to a dentist saying, I can't necessarily convince you why I'm the best. I wonder if that falls into imposter syndrome. And I'm not well versed in that. But
none of us are experts.
Yeah, but she has wrote a book. She's very knowledgeable. Sure. She's researched on it. So I can't wait to talk to her about that because it sounds very
I'm excited
similar.
to listen.
It's funny that you mentioned kind of your quibbles with the male brain because I'm reading the female brain right now too. Same author, Dr. Luann Brizendine. And some of her peers have said, this sounds a little medieval. This sounds a little old-fashioned. It doesn't sound very progressive. It doesn't take that into consideration. And whereas some people are saying, no, this is very sound brain science. So it is interesting to see how people interpret that research that she's done. I'd love to talk to her about it because I'm sure she would squash any of that. But then I'd also like to have somebody else in the room who disagrees with her and have them kind of go at it.
They could also box. Like we could put gloves on them and they can fight each other. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
So I think that it's it's important to have those discussions, and obviously there are physiological differences between men and women, and brain science is about exploring them. I just I wonder about some of the conclusions that she drew based on chemicals in the brain and things like that. Like maybe it points you in that direction, or maybe you can see how much of it is correlation and how much of it is causation. Fascinating subject matter, obviously. So much of it rings true, and then you just have those moments where you're like, I don't know about that. Like and you guys had those moments when you were discussing the episode too. That
it's an incredibly
I don't know how much of
broad topic too. You know what I mean? There's a lot of moving parts, so it's kind of hard to isolate. Like you brought up a good point. There's so many variables in situations that it's almost tough to separate what's nature versus nurture.
Right.
And I think it's important too to recognize that brain science absolutely is not black or white because there is literally a lot of gray matter when we're talking about the brain. So
I'm nodding. Yes. I can't see it.
So you said here that episode 2, you've got all sorts of exclamation points around it. Talking about the suicide episode. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you for name dropping me right before you started talking about suicide.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I figured if anything could bring someone out of a depression, it would be hearing your voice.
So nothing to do with midlife, but I think that it's important to recognize that there are moments in people's lives where you're going to be down and you're going to have down times that are difficult. And I had one of those times in my early 20s, right before I met Brian, actually. But I had a time, I was living in my first apartment with a roommate, and it was $600 a month was our rent. And it was like barely affordable for me. I was working at the time at Hollywood Video, which was still a thing.
Oh my, what was Hollywood Video?
It was a place where you would rent VHS tapes and then later DVDs when I was still working there.
My goodness.
Tangent here. Have you guys seen the Blockbuster Video documentary on Netflix?
I've not seen it.
It's great. It's really
queue.
Fantastic. So I highly recommend everybody check out that Blockbuster Video documentary, especially if you're people our age. If you're people of our age, you will love it. You will relate to every second of it. Also, Ron Funches is a national treasure. He is. And
I see funny. That. I saw that Kevin Smith is in it too, so I'm definitely going to watch it.
It's good stuff, but continue.
So I was working at Hollywood Video at the time, full time. I was an assistant director, they called it, which is basically the store's assistant manager. And I was like 19 or 20 years old. And I think I was making like $17,000 or $18,000 a year, full-time salary.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was working 50 plus hours a week in 5 days. I was working 10-hour shifts. I would close the store every day, every working day on the weekend and during the week. And then I was going to school 16 credits full-time at a community college, North Hennepin Community College in Brooklyn Park. And I was absolutely burned out. I was working till 2 a.m, going home, getting up, going right to class, get done with class, have an hour or two for lunch, and then go to work again. And then there were a few days where I wouldn't do that. And then the couple of days a week where I would have evenings free would be like Tuesday and Thursday. And like nobody called me. Nobody wanted to hang out. I didn't go out of my way to go hang out with people during the week. I was in a real rut. I was in a difficult place in my life. And I turned every thought negative. Everything that I could do negatively, I would turn it negative.
That's easy to do when you're in that situation, though.
And we were in a 3rd floor apartment. And I remember I was, like I said, 19, 20 years old. And I had a particularly terrible day. I found out I was failing class that I wasn't going to be able to, wasn't going to be able to pass. I wasn't going to be able to make it back. So I wasted, however many hundreds of dollars on that class, and I was going to have to retake it. And I was going to have to do another year of school. And I was like, maybe I'll drop out and come back. And then I had a horrible day at work because the negative thing rolled into that day of work. And I got home that night and I drank a lot. I was 19 or 20 years old. And we had booze in the house, and I drank like pretty much everything I could find. And I was sitting out on the patio, and I remember sitting there thinking, I was looking out and I was like, I bet if I jumped off, I'd die. I bet I could. I bet it'd be over and I wouldn't have to deal with this shit. And then it was just like a snap. And I told you that I found kind of this brand of mindfulness before I knew mindfulness was a thing. I didn't do it obviously that night, thank God. And I woke up the next morning, I just felt like garbage. And I was like, I cannot do this to myself. Why can't I be happy? Why can't I? And I want to be really clear. I've met people that have needed help and have had mental health disorders that you can't get out of it on your own. But for someone like me who just spiraled themselves into it, and I don't think that I was broken in any way. I was just like, if mental health issues are cancer, I had a cold. So I said, you know what? Every opportunity you have to take something as a positive from now on, just for today, everything you can take as a positive, do that and turn it. Just take a moment to turn something positive. Just one thing, and then maybe take that thing and do it another time. And then the next day was 2 things and 3 things. And from my change in disposition was like night and day in less than a week. And, I not everything was great after that. I did drop out of college. I went back to college years later and got my degree, but I did drop out of college at that time, and I quit that job. And I was like, I just can't do all of this. And I need to be more important for me. And it's 20 years ago now, so I barely remember this mindset, but I do remember, there's nothing I remember more strongly than the moment that I really knew I was going to throw myself off that balcony. And it was a low balcony. I remember I had my hand on it, and I was like, I could just jump right over this thing and be over.
And I'm always curious how many people out there have stories that are similar to that. And
I think it's a lot, right?
I think almost everybody.
Yeah, and I feel like you guys said, almost everybody probably has a story like that. So then what steps did people take in order to get out of that funk? And if you're out there listening and you have a story like that, we'd love to know. We don't need to necessarily know the details of why you were in that funk. I think I personally am more interested, what steps did you take in order to get out of that funk, get out of that mindset? For me, it was going to therapy and learning about mindfulness, because I had been spiraling in that devastating thought tornado for years and years and years without even really slowing down to come to grips with it. And so, if you've been in that situation, we'd love to hear from you so that you can share with us and our listeners what it was, or what the steps were that you took to get to a place where you love yourself. And that's something that ever since reading that book, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, I've really thought more and more about how important it is to just simply love ourselves.
Self-love. It is. It is the most important thing.
And
Billy, you made me cry a couple times. Well, you did, and then Lee's story last week made me cry. And I'm a person who's very comfortable with crying. I cry at the end of movies all the time. But it is sharing those stories is so incredibly brave. And Brian, your story too. I'm so proud of you guys.
Well, and we'll finish on this here. It's a year since Patches passed away. And it's obviously still very emotional for me. And she's the sweetest dog in the whole wide world. And I talked about in episode 9 how I haven't experienced a whole lot of joy in my life since she passed away. This whole week has been filled with joy because I knew I was going to get to talk to you, Matt Hazard.
Oh.
So, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. I love you. I miss your face. I cannot wait to give you a hug because I know you are going to squeeze the shit out of me with your big,
hug you so hard.
Rubenesque body.
I love you guys so much. Billy, I love you. I love you, buddy. And Brian, you're all right.
Yeah, I'm okay. You're pretty good too.
All right. So I'll tell you what, that sounds like a good place for us to call it an episode. Thank you once again, Matt, for being part of the show. For Matt, for Brian, this is Billy. Thank you for listening to the Mindful Midlife Crisis. May you feel happy, healthy, and loved. Take care, friends. We'll see you season 2. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Mindful Midlife Crisis podcast. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with your family and friends. We will do our best to put out new content every Wednesday to get you over the midweek hump. If you want episodes to be downloaded automatically to your phone each week, all you need to do is hit the checkmark, subscribe, like, or follow button, depending on what podcast format you're using. While you're at it, feel free to leave our show a quick 5-star review with a few kind words so more people like you can easily find our show. If you're really enjoying the show and you want to help us out, feel free to make a donation to www.buymeacoffee.com/MMC podcast. That's www.buymeacoffee.com/MMC podcast. You can also access the link in our show notes. We use the money from these donations to pay whatever expenses we incur from producing the show, but ultimately, we record this show for you. So if you keep listening, we'll keep recording and releasing new episodes each week regardless. If you'd like to contact us, or if you have suggestions about what you'd like us to discuss on future episodes, feel free to email us at mindfulmidlifecrisis@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at mindful_midlife_crisis. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to the articles and resources we reference throughout the show. Thanks again for listening. May you feel happy, healthy, and loved.